Imagine a scene in the wild of a beautiful and unique and majestic zebra that's just been attacked by a pack of hyenas, that's seriously maimed and wounded, injured, and been left for dead. All of the other zebras in the herd have ran for safety, and now this zebra is left defenseless, vulnerable, maimed and wounded, and fighting for their life, trying to survive, trying to gimp along to find food and water and to heal and to overcome the attack they've just been through. And then suddenly, a bunch of vultures start circling about that injured, harmed zebra. And the vultures see the zebra as easy prey, an easy target, because they're wounded, they're isolated and alone, they're vulnerable. And this is very symbolic, a lot of parallels to those who have experienced targeting situations, because there's a commonality amongst many who have been targeted. They're often those who have been wounded or harmed, whether it be their family of origin where they've experienced abuse and mistreatment, or in an abusive relationship. They could have been wounded by systems that have abused them. They could be suffering from physical ailments, actual physical injury or disability. It could be mental disabilities and issues there. It could be a history of addiction. It could be a history of poverty, a lack of support system, a lack of resources, a lack of education, a lack of opportunity, a lot of injustices throughout their lives. Targeted individuals tend to be those who are easy prey, who have already been maimed, wounded by others or by the world in general, and they're the ones that tend to be attacked. And it's interesting because targeting is timeless. It's been going on since the beginning of time. And the story of the life of Jesus Christ and his persecution and crucifixion is a prime example. Jesus Christ is a prime example of a targeted individual. And what's interesting about his targeting is Jesus spent his time with those who had been wounded, those who had suffered and been abused, those who were suffering with addictions, those who were struggling with poverty, sin, whatever their physical ailments were, mental ailments were. That's who Jesus Christ helped and supported and taught and spent his time healing. And he showed us the way of who we're supposed to be spending our time and efforts in humanitarian work and in serving others and uplifting others and supporting those who are maimed, who are wounded, who are struggling in society. He showed us by his example, and in doing so, he was actually persecuted, and the truth of his life was distorted to justify that persecution, much like the truth of many targeted individuals and their character is distorted. And so today I was going to talk about the parallels, because I find it fascinating when you look at the dynamics of the targeting of Jesus Christ. Many of the same patterns, many of the same behaviors, that group think, that mob mentality, the persecution and condemnation are so similar to what targeted individuals nowadays are still experiencing. And it really comes down to attacks on the vulnerable, those who have been hurt or wounded, who are already suffering and are seen as an easy target or easy prey, much like the wounded zebra. And in all of our targeting stories, we have our Judases. The Judases in our stories are those who were close to us, that we trusted, that we were good to, that we helped, that we were very loving to, that we served, that we gave to, and those that were the closest to us, that turned us over to the enemy or betrayed us or turned their back on us when we needed it the most. We all have Judases in our story, much like the Judas in Jesus Christ's story. And then there are the Peters. And Peter denied Jesus Christ. He knew his character, he knew his life, he knew of his goodness, yet he denied him. He didn't defend him, he didn't help or rescue him. The people that Jesus was closest to turned their backs on him, much like a targeted individual. We have Peters in our life that know of our character, that know the smear campaign is full of lies, that the gossip is untrue, that we're being abused and mistreated and treated unfairly and experiencing injustice. Yet the Peters in our life deny who we are and go along with it and do nothing to defend or help us, just like in Jesus's story. And really the goal is to diminish the goodness. So Jesus did only good. His intent was only to help and do good to others. And in targeting stories, all of our good qualities, all the good that we've done is being erased by the smear campaign, by the false narrative. All the focus is now being placed on this new character that's been fabricated and created that paints the targeted individual as a villain, as a bad person, as a danger, as somebody that needs and is justifiably someone who should be abused, instead of recognizing all the good qualities in our lives, all of our accomplishments, the things that we've overcame. Maybe we came from an abusive family and we overcame that. Maybe we've broken generational curses. Maybe we've, rebuilt our lives after losing everything. Yet all of that becomes diminished by those who target. The distorted truth of our character, again with the smear campaign, truth is distorted, perception is shifted into a new reality, a false narrative, a false reality, and distorting who we are. So even a fraction of truth about our character will be elaborated and exaggerated and twisted and contorted in such a way that it supports the false narrative, and all sight is lost of the true goodness and the character of the targeted individual. Condemned by hypocrites. Jesus taught not to judge others. None of us are perfect. We all have weaknesses and things that we struggle with and things that we need to overcome, and habits and ways of thinking that we're constantly in need of working on. And it's ironic how many people will participate in gang stalking and targeting situations, yet they have their own work to do on self, yet point the finger and judge and gossip and persecute and condemn another person while imperfect themselves, much like in the situation with Jesus. Persecution is a big part of our story. Some of us are persecuted by religious groups. We're treated as if we're different because we're othered, vulnerable because of lifestyle, belief system. If we're identified as being someone who's alternative or lives alternatively in beliefs or practices or just daily life than the majority, suddenly there is persecution, or you look different, you talk different, you don't follow the group, you're othered because of your skin color, because of your gender, because of your background, your socioeconomic status, because you have a disability, because of the family you come from, or the amount of money you have, or because of the car you drive, or the clothes you wear. Persecution for just being ourselves. We're attacked literally for just existing as ourselves. Idle bystanders are also a very big part of our story. So many are witness to the abuse of a targeted individual, to the scheming, the corruption, the setups, the slander, the gossip, the smear campaign, the total inhumane treatment that another human is experiencing. And so many will just stand by and not have the courage or the character to come to their rescue. And this is exactly what Jesus experienced. As others who knew of his goodness, knew of his character and all the good he did in his life, stood back and let others persecute and crucify him, and did nothing, just stood by idly and allowed another human being to be wrongfully persecuted and treated inhumanely. Many chances to do right. So many have opportunity. Judas had many opportunities to do the right thing, to change direction, to change his course. And many of our attackers, our targeters, those in the organized harassment groups, the gang stalkers, have many opportunities to turn from the wickedness, to turn from the sins, to turn away from abusing another person and to go and confess what's going on, to come forward or to say, you know what, we shouldn't be doing this. This is wrong. We should change what we're doing. So many have the chance to do the right thing, but choose not to. Conspiracy is a large part of our story. There is so much scheming and plotting and planning, setups and group chats and meetings and collaborations of many different players conspiring against another, just like in Jesus' situation. Many conspire to frame a targeted individual of crimes, to wrongly label them so that they'll be treated differently, to wrongly influence or have bias in an investigation, to deter law enforcement from seeing things clearly. There's always conspiracy in these cases. Evil power, or evil people in positions of power, those in high places and who are power hungry, and this could be, an abusive or narcissistic parent that's involved in our attacks, or a former partner, a boss that's very power hungry. It could be somebody in the community that is using their position of authority, their network, their resources, their affiliations, their name, to instead be a pillar in the community and influence others for good and be an ethical and moral leader. They're instead choosing to use that role, that position, to do harm, to victimize others for the love of power, the love of money, and wrongfully using their influence to be destructive to others, to community, to abuse. Corruption happens over time. So corruption doesn't just evolve overnight. It takes repetitive action and repetitive influence of others and failure to report of many others, and over again getting away with bending the rules, breaking the rules, doing things behind the scenes. And over time, that's how corruption is bred like wildfire. It takes over because it's been practiced in small fragmented ways for so long that it evolves into a whole corrupt system. Delivered to the enemy. So just like Judas delivered Jesus to his enemy, many of us are delivered to predators, a honey trap or a handler, a very dangerous person that will abuse and exploit and be violent with and steal from us. Our family may be part of it, our community. Many will just say, here, have at 'em, and let us be victimized and be idle bystanders and not do anything while we're being subjected to multiple crimes. Unjust trial. So Jesus went through an unjust trial. He was wrongly accused of crimes. He was wrongly convicted. There wasn't, due process in his situation. And many of us have experienced the same, whether it's hidden court cases or we've been wrongly accused of crimes. We are being stolen from by somebody calling us a thief or a fraud, or we're being exploited by someone and being called, promiscuous and a sex worker by somebody who actually is a sex worker, or labeled as a drug user by someone who actually is a drug user. There's a lot of hypocrisy in these stories and a lot of injustice, and this really influences investigation because they'll get a large amount of people to unjustly accuse in the smear campaign, and because of the majority of the volume of people telling the lie, it will cause bias in that investigation, unfortunately. Demand of the crowd. So again, that large mob mentality, that group think, because the majority says it's true, it must be true, instead of fact checking, instead of going to the source asking the victim, hey, this is what's being said about you. Did you know? Is this true? No one ever does that in a targeting situation because no one wants the truth. They enjoy the lie. They enjoy the attack because of that mob mentality. Everyone's doing it. I want to be part of the group. You know, I want to be accepted. I don't want to be the odd man out that has courage and integrity that stands up against this abusive mob. I'm just going to join in because it's easier, it's entertainment to attack and victimize and talk badly about someone. And because of the demands of the crowd in Jesus' situation, those demanding his persecution and his crucifixion, it led to his demise instead of those who stood by idly, that knew he was being wrongly treated, that knew of his goodness, that knew the truth. If they would have stood up and defended him and protected him as the larger crowd, it would have changed that dynamic. Wrongly categorized. So again, Jesus was crucified in between two criminals. So he was categorized as if a criminal, even though he committed no crime, he did nothing wrong, he had no intent to do harm to anyone. He was trying to do good and teach and heal. And many targeted individuals are wrongly categorized and labeled and placed in a box. This is who you are. This is your character. You fit in this box. And many, many times it's inaccurate. There's no truth to it, or a fraction of truth has been distorted and contorted and made into this elaborate scenario. And now this poor victim is boxed in and categorized in a way that will follow them indefinitely, and it will affect the way people treat them. They'll be isolated. People will shun them and not want to be around them, not want to help them, not want to support them. Even their own family members, their extended family, will see that they're being abused and not come to their rescue. The people that they should be able to trust and count on in such a difficult circumstance will not help, will turn their backs on the targeted individual because of that smear campaign which wrongly categorizes them. Jesus had his rights violated in many ways, much like us targeted individuals. Our privacy rights are violated, our due process rights are violated, we're exploited, we're smeared and slandered, we're ran out of our jobs and our homes, our communities. We are attacked physically, our property's vandalized, there's attempts on our life, our records are falsified, people lie about us, perjure, provide false statements, false claims, false reports. The amount of injustice that a targeted individual experiences is outstandingly notable. And just like in Jesus's situation, it's interesting how that pattern, or these patterns, are so similar in our stories. And there is inhumane treatment, again, with all those violations of human rights that occur in our stories, where we're not given proper access to justice, we're not treated the same as the other members of community. So because a targeted individual has been branded incorrectly as being something they're not, now suddenly they're not receiving the same rights and treatment that any other member of the community is receiving. And it really goes to show how those who are othered in society don't get the same shot. They don't get a fair shot in investigations and in life in general because of that labeling and that persecution mentality. And really the goal is to silence truth. Jesus was influencing others in a way that was threatening to authority. Many were following him and starting to see things differently, and he was changing the world for good. And that's threatening to people that are power hungry and that do things in an evil way. They don't want truth speakers to be out here being themselves. They don't want whistleblowers to be speaking, or witnesses to crime that have pertinent information that could take down organizations or agencies if they spoke up and told the truth. Silencing and discrediting the targeted individual and making it to where no one will believe or even want to listen to what they have to say is so important, because what we have to say is so important. and they're wanting to silence us simply for being ourselves. And it's because we're seen as different, a minority in some fashion, as being othered from the rest. We don't follow the main group or the main style as everyone else in the way that we act or carry ourselves or live our lives. We're just authentically being ourselves, and that's threatening to people that can't be themselves, because we're a mirror. We reflect back to other people, if we're confident just being ourselves. Even if we're a unique and majestic zebra, we're okay with it. And people that aren't okay with themselves really struggle with that and want to persecute and attack people who are doing good and being themselves, but live a little different than others. And I just think it's notable, the injustices and the persecution that Jesus Christ went through, and how these patterns of his life experience and his crucifixion are so similar to the patterns that we're still seeing today in targeting situations, and how human nature hasn't shifted. The way that people are mistreated and abused and othered is still the same, and it shows a lack of progress. And it's really fascinating that Jesus Christ set this example of who to help, who to serve, who to uplift, who to support, the maimed, the injured, those who have been wounded and experienced trauma in their life, that have disabilities, that need help, that are struggling financially, whatever the case may be, the vulnerable. Instead of being a people that uplifts and helps and follows the example of Jesus Christ, so many choose to follow the example of his persecutors and persecute the vulnerable, just like Jesus Christ was.